Okay, so here we go. Hopefully the cough will calm down. So, welcome to the March 3rd, 2026 Virgo Full Moon Lunar Eclipse. So this is the second eclipse in this series for this particular moment, and it's intense. Virgo does have to do with a lot with health, and I think that and 12 it's one of those things of Jesus and 12, and it's like the dozen always seem to come up, and 12, 1 and 2 basically equal out to a 3, which is Holy Trinity. So there's a lot of symbolism with 12. So it's 12 degrees of Virgo. And since it's a 3-3 day, it's like a double 3 kind of time. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of energy with this, and all you have to do is look at the news to observe what's happening here in with February and March of 2026 to see the levels of disintegration that are really reverberating out. And it's not just the United States, it's the whole, it really is planetary. But what's happening is that the disintegration really is coming into the world of form. And it's doing that obviously in very vast strokes of 3D painting and awareness, and it's not a pretty picture. And yet I think it's also a reflection of where a lot of people still are to a certain extent, and the ones that aren't there, though, they're attempting to pull back down into all that primal survival mode. I mean, that's all this ever is. It's about taking people into the very core, raw fear that only the dark really want to keep everybody in, because it's how they continue their energy. And so, the darker you can keep the planet as a group of humanity, then you keep the vibrational field lower. Well, in theory, in their brain, the reptilian brain, but it creates the vastness of the distortion, and this really is kind of like the death throes of what has been the old life, and they want to do it through war yet again. And it's interesting, I was reading some things today that people were talking about, well, I mean, a lot of people are projecting their values of what they think's happening, but there's been all this prophecy, the Bible prophecy, or all the elders would talk about this and that and say, oh, we're going to come to a time when we're going to have World War III. Well, I think that they think that that's what this is, and I think that they really want to pull us into a world war. They want people warring. They want people not creating from your heart coherence. They don't want you being friendly with other countries. They want you friendly with other people on the planet. They want to create as much distortion as possible. Now, I hope and pray we don't have to go into a deep dive of deep distortion that we did in World War I and World War II. I don't think we're going to go that dark. I hope and pray anyway. But what's for sure is that whoever's in charge of different countries are still controlling the script. And when you look at the script through the astrology, we're really birthing. I mean, because Saturn and Neptune are at the beginning of Aries, that is birthing. The birthing process is not pretty. I mean, I'm not female, so I've not experienced it, and I've not been there in attendance of it, so I can't speak to, the reality of that. I can imagine it, obviously, And I mean, you're talking about a major birth pains, as a human species, attempting to go into, a higher way of being. And then when you've got these people that are still stuck in all of the lower vibrational frequencies, I mean, we're still sharing the planet. We're still sharing the same adamantium particles. We're sharing the morphogenetic field. But that's always true. It's never not true. It's just that right now we're at a time where people that are wanting to use their free will choice to create as much distortion and dark and fear, they've decided to ramp it up. And it is a reflection of their soul purpose and their soul journey. And, the problem is going to be, I think, a lot of New Agers want to be all love and light and everything, but they're not. It's kind of like if you think you're just focusing over here, yes, we're creating that reality, and that's true. But when you've got any part of yourself on a personal level, if you don't go and face whatever it is within you that's creating the disease pattern or the distortion, then you can't go heal it. And the same is true for the collective. So we cannot be in ignorance of anything or anyone or any group or you can't be in ignorance of anything. We have to own everything. We have to be able to shift it, transmute it, to give it away. I think 0 degree Aries, it's a hot degree, it's world point degree, it's that alpha omega point. So it's kind of like, we're still raw from everything being at the end of Pisces, the end of the old dream, and attempting to go into new, functions and stuff. But it's just a very volatile dynamic of really what's happening. And the fact that we're doing all of this, the personal planets are all at the end of the zodiac in Pisces right now at this particular time. So, and with Mercury retrograde, they're all the personal planets. Let's see. Venus went across the retrograde Mercury right after it went retrograde on the last day of February. So Venus is the first one that we had communication issues with. Then it's going to go over. Mercury's going to go over NESSUS, which is the abuse stuff. So it's like I said in the last call. Mercury retrograde has been right next to NESSUS and all these abuse patterns. But all of these personal planets are going to go across the retrograde Mercury. The chances of that happening are minuscule. To have them all traveling together, the Venus, the Sun, and then Pallas Athena, of course, is all about wisdom. It's about justice. It's about all sorts of things. And then Mars will be the last one as Mars crosses the north node of where we're going. And so it creates a personal shift individually and collectively. And all of this is happening, for the next, let me see. Mercury goes direct on the 20th of March. So Venus is going to get into Aries on the 6th in 3 days. The Sun goes in, of course, every year on the equinox on the 20th, spring equinox. Mars doing it on the 9th of August. Mercury doing it on the 14th. So between March and April, that's really when the new beginnings happen. Actually, later in actually about May, Pallas Athena goes in on the 26th of April. So let's say by then, and each of those are coming across Neptune and Saturn, which are giving structure to the personal planets and also creating the new dream. So we're really in this crucible. And these eclipses, have been perfectly, I think, set up and attuned to take us into our core at the end of Pisces and really root any of the last stuff, especially with NESSUS, the abuse patterns, basically. And if you look at the external world, that's what's happening. Now, I will say that I think it goes further into the next couple months even after that, because if you go into the sidereal zodiac, Pisces is overlaid over Aries. And so in the Western world, if you're looking at the Aries world point, in the zodiac, it's actually overlaid on a different sign. And I think that's part of the distortion. The more I've sat into it and looked about it, so you've got half the people, perceiving that they're creating the new, but then you've got the actual zodiac saying, no, we're still stuck at the end of Pisces. So I think they represent two timelines, quite frankly. I think that, and of course, how you think about the world, you create your reality. So if you have one group of astrologers in the West that are looking at things through the tropical zodiac, they are tending that new timeline. They're tending Aries, they're tending the new energies. If you've got people in the East, which are the China and India and all these other cultures, they're on an older timeline, which is saying Pisces is still all the stuff that the Western world said we just went through. Well, actually, we're finishing because these planets are all in it for the next 2 months. So I think it's really messy as far as how it looks when you look at humanity as a group and what's happening. But I think both things are happening. I think you can interpret both, and both things are true. No matter what is being said in Western world, I think it represents the DNA of what's playing out with us in the West. And I think part of that, when I went in and kind of worked with Spirit this week and just kind of said, what is this? What's it about? If you look at the Americas, especially the United States, I think there's a lot of souls here that really came from Atlantis. I think we've really learned some of our core, raw lessons as far as the highest expressions of God expression. And so we're attempting to, move through in a more balanced human expression, I think, here in the United States, although it does certainly look it in certain ways. And I think Europe too. The East has always had different philosophies, whether it's the Middle East. Of course, the Middle East is right in between the two. And the Middle East has always been, theoretically looked at as the Holy Land. And so there was this value and projection placed onto it. And it was written in all these different books between different versions of the Bible, the Quran, the Torah, Buddhist teachings. They're all in these different spaces. But that's when religion hijacked the narrative. So if you release all those narratives, it takes you to the core of what's left, because you're no longer projecting the value of those old narratives onto the world. But most people are not in those spaces. I think if you're on this call, then you've at least cleared enough, from your own genetic and ancestral inheritance, where you've given up the story. You've given up a lot of your history. You've given up the parts where you're carrying around the victim mode. You're no longer a victim. You don't perceive yourself as wounded. You don't. It doesn't mean that there's not still remnants in there, when you're, dealing with family or friends or business associates, what have you. I mean, that's part of, the human expression and the soul progression. But I do think that people that are, especially in the Americas, and they're all over the world, but I meing, I think we were supposed to be the new Atlantis. at the same time, there's still the genetic inheritance of the dark, the Alpha Draconian stuff, all of the different overlays that were, projected, especially through MK Ultra and satanic ritual abuse. And people just don't. That's not mainstream talk. I mean, they don't want to know about it. They don't want to hear about it. I mean, that's the next part. I don't know if mainstream media will ever discuss that. I mean, obviously they talk about, the Epstein files and what have you. But we have to look at the actual dynamic of the control, greed, manipulation, especially through the blackmail, and how that's been perpetrated through eons of time. And that really goes back thousands and thousands of years. It's just the blackmail was more blatant. But the deal with this, there's always perceived control. And there's so many ways that we gave up our sovereignty. And this has gone on, again, thousands of years. And it's really hard for people to step back and take their power because they don't have a frame of reference about what that means. And taking your power happens in a lot of different ways. It happens just within one-on-one relationships with your family, whoever you're working with. It's kind of like, how do you know if you're being, and I've said this before, in reaction to what someone else is saying or doing or projecting onto you? How do you step into your own thought processes, your own decision making, and not let all of those things from other people affect your creative capacities? Especially if you're creating from the Godhead, especially if you're creating from just pure presence. If you're in that space, you're going to create free from any of the distortion. You're not going to be creating from a place of fear. You're not going to be creating from a place of reaction. You're not going to create from any lower presence. And I think most people have forgotten what that looks like. That's what Spirit's telling me anyway. And again, I never plan what I'm going to say with these things. I'm sitting here. I'm kind of looking at the computer some, but I'm also just staring off in the hall over here. It's just got stuff on this bookcase, and it's like I just go into this vacuous place where it's like Spirit just kind of takes over and just starts speaking. And so I'm like, okay, what is that? And this really is where each of us have the capacity to just get out of our own way and let Spirit speak to us. So if something, and I always say this true too, because Judith always said it, and it's true. Yeah, if there's ever anything that I articulate on any of these calls and it just doesn't feel right to you, spit it out. Please do not take on something just because I've said it here. I'm certainly not. I don't think a one-stop shop for wisdom. I think wisdom is all around us, and each person's wisdom is only limited by our capacity to get out of the way of where we've been as the wounded parts of our expression. And it's a huge jump. Judith has talked about this a lot. Those of you that knew Judith, it's like how do we create just from nothing and not be in reaction to the world, to the outer world of form, and that can be very challenging. Like right now, I've got a very dull headache that I've had for a leftover of all this energy. I'm like, where is this coming from? And I don't usually carry, coughs and things, and it's like, what is that? And I always have to ask myself, well, is this just stuff that I'm clearing on the personal level? Is it stuff that's being thrown at us on the collective level? Are there places, where there are the field is being bombarded, with all sorts of alien technologies. I mean, I don't know. I think all the above is true. I think we're clearing out so much, and it's hard to track it. That's one of the things. I mean, Judith did teach me when I'm going into this stuff how to track something. And I mean, you get to a place where you become just so aware, and you get these messages, you get these feelings, you get this just internal knowing of, oh, that's what this is. And I don't go sit in all of that the way that Judith did for a lot of years. It's just not what I came here to do, to track how humanity's shifting this or that. Or I mean, I get feelings about certain things when we're in these calls because I'm just out of the way. But bigger picture dynamic, the core thought to all of this is, how can you be in a moment and be in the world but not of the world? And I've said that so many times too. So, okay, pulling it back to this eclipse. So this is a full moon in Virgo. So Virgo has to do, especially with health, matters of the sixth house, which is, really, really about health, but every type of health, not just in physicality. It's mental health, it's emotional health, it's spiritual health. What makes us feel complete as an expression of God. And a lot of people are not articulating that. We're stuck in so many other limited ways of perceiving ourselves. But when you go into the totality of it and ask yourself, who are you as a healthy expression? You have to really release a lot of stuff you're holding on to in the way you perceive yourself. And again, this is where the baggage. Full moons are all about release. So we had the new moon in Pisces last time. This is in Virgo, which is in opposition to all of those personal planets in Pisces. So this moon, the sun is in Pisces with the personal planets and the Mercury retrograde. But the moon is being created in Virgo, so it's in opposition. So it's creating, on the emotional level, the moon represents the emotional body, individually and collectively. When it's opposing all of these other energies, that creates, it's almost like a tornadic effect. Because in a tornado, you've got a pinpoint of a beginning energy, and then it spirals out. So imagine in the spiral, the energy on each side of the spiral is in opposition, creating. So when you've got this big vortex that gets created, and the energy all the way around those circles, and of course, the vortex just keeps getting bigger and bigger. It holds together because of the polarity. If you're on one side of a tornado looking across the other side of a tornado, those are opposite energy fields holding that vortex. So you can kind of imagine that that's kind of like how these planets are in opposition of the moon. And it's a workable energy for sure, but it's the most intense energy from an astrological standpoint outside of conjunctions where energies are sitting together. So it's almost like you've got Venus, Sun, and Mars, Pallas Athena, Vesta, with Mercury retrograde opposite our whole emotional body. So it sets up a completely different dynamic. And also the NESSUS Centaur, which is abuses of every kind. So full moon is releasing. We're releasing a lot of stuff. I don't think it's going to get any better necessarily until Mars crosses NESSUS. Mars meets up with NESSUS and Pallas Athena at the exact same point. The chances of this happening are just, again, minuscule. That doesn't happen until March the 28th and 29th. I mean, literally, they're pinpointed on top of NESSUS. So I think as this energy builds all the way through March, and Mercury is, retrograded during most of that, and Mercury won't cross that point until like the first week of April. So it's the other reason I say that the next 2 months are creating a huge. It's almost like a crucible. This is baptism by fire, and by the time we get it, well, actually, this is kind of water right now because we're in Pisces. But when we get to Aries, all this is going to turn into fire by April and May with the personal planets, especially with Mars. But when Mars hits on NESSUS of abuse, I think you're going to really see people like the main world leaders. You could even include China in this, but I think Donald Trump, Putin, probably a little ding-a-ling out there in North Korea. I mean, all of them. It doesn't matter who they are. If someone is in a place of narcissistic personality disorder, or saying that they're looking at everybody else's best good, but they're doing it from a war standpoint, I think the whole month of March is just going to blow up, and I think it crescendos in the last week of March. Now we'll see how that plays out. Again, it is in Pisces, so you've got this Mars war god on top of NESSUS in Pisces with Pallas Athena and Justice, and Mercury going direct. All of this is, I think it's going to be a lot of oceanic warring stuff. I think you're going to hear a lot more battleships. I think you're going to hear, it's just, I don't know, that's just the feeling I get with all that. And then, of course, the sun at the spring equinox going into Aries on March 20th. Then you've got fire introduced with things, and that's going over Neptune and Saturn. It's like there's a lot of energy, working with all this. So, and we're gonna have to see just how it plays out. I'm not going to project a value onto it, although I guess I just did. But between Pluto, sextiling Neptune and Saturn, it's transformational energy at the highest and most vast, brushstroke, working with, Neptune and Saturn and Aries. So, I mean, that's workable energy. I mean, sextiles are workable, but you have to work with it. You can't just, it's not flowing energy necessarily. And then you've got this stuff in Pisces in the middle. So, again, it's a huge transitions, transmutations for humans and all that kind of stuff. See, what else was I going to? Oh, that's one thing I noticed. The 3-eye atlas, I only tracked it through March the 12th. But if it basically stays at the same degree, the trine to 3-eye atlas doesn't really just stop on the 12th. I think it's going to slowly leave the solar system, but I have not really gotten any data from anyone on the time period on which it really is going to fade away at that point. But the trine to 3-eye atlas is here in Pisces. To me, that says it's cosmic awareness, flowing energy that's workable, that's assisting us. So I would say that beings beyond us through 3-eye atlas are assisting in this big pileup of all these personal planets and energies. Again, I mean, that's me projecting value onto something. Most astrologers are not speaking of 3-eye atlas in regards to aspects. I mean, when I pull it up on the sheet, it's there. It's present in the solar system. It is in the ecliptic, so it's in and along all the planets. It's not traversing the solar system. It's not coming in like at a straight angle and piercing the the flat solar system. It's moving through the solar system. Now, it will supposedly be moving out here sometime in March or April, somewhere in there, but I don't know to what extent that will happen. But we have gone through a big cosmic, through this interstellar object being with us since they put the actual founding of it at the beginning of July of last year. But when I go back and check other things, it actually goes back to the beginning of May in some trajectories. So we've been working with this energy, whatever it is, cosmic interstellar awareness, awakening, since that time point. So it may just be that it was here to catapult us into a deeper awakening as a human group, species. I mean, I don't know. I think the jury is still out on what all is happening with it. The other thing that's interesting, when you just look at asteroids, though, the Jonathan Murray and the Johnny asteroids, which represent my childhood time, literally are sitting on Pluto in the middle of the eclipse point. I mean, right now I'm just two degrees away from Pluto in both of those expressions. So, am I going through deep transformation? I don't know. Does that mean everybody with that asteroid name? I don't know. I mean, we could make a case for such a thing, I think. You can always pull up your asteroids in the Astro Dance website and see where first name, last name, middle names come up. I don't know. Either way, we're in a huge crucible of shift and change. And all of those planets are not going to be into Aries working with Neptune and Saturn, like I said, until the beginning of May. But by then, we really should be, I think, grounding into the new beginnings, whatever that looks like. So for the purpose of this call and the people listening to it, look in your own life to see what you're creating, what your family's creating, what you're doing in your business world and life, and see what's happening. Now, as we go later into, well, actually not even later in the year, this is another dynamic. I actually just saw this last night. Juno is going to enter Aquarius at the end of March on the 29th. So as it does that, it's going to be coming up with Pluto. Juno is about all partnership, marriages of all kinds, and it approaches Pluto through the whole month of April. On the 9th, it will be 2 degrees away. On the 16th and 17th, Juno will cross Pluto. Atropos, one of the fates, enters on the 15th of April. So all those three things coming together, I think, are going to transform, Pluto transformation, relationships, marriages, partnerships, Juno. I think that April is going to be a huge partnering transformational month. Again, it's at the beginning of Aquarius, between 0 and 10 degrees, I would say, in there, because Pluto's a pretty big thing, transformation of anything it touches. But Atropos of fate, the fact that it's coming in there also, let's see, Atropos, I think, was the cutter of time. So I think there are going to be a lot of fated relationship changes of every kind. Marriages, friendships, business partnerships. The fact that they're all there at Pluto, which is huge transformation. I would say by that, third week, on the 23rd, they're all within 3 or 4 degrees of each other. Tight. They both cross Pluto, but then Juno and Atropos cross each other on the 8th and 9th of May, just right past Pluto, having been gone through deep transformation. And they're on a couple of the other centaurs, Orius and Amicus, and the moon's going to be crossing them when they're together. So that's going to be the emotional body. As they continue to move forward, they move away from Pluto, but then Juno starts coming in for its, stationing retrograde, and it's only like maybe 5 or 6 degrees away from Pluto. So that's going to be in June. It goes retrograde on June the 8th. But Juno is going to come back, partnering again. It's going to retrograde back over Pluto that will also be retrograde. And by July, Juno will cross Pluto again. So it's one of the things that I noticed that I really think we're going to have so much partnership transformation in the way that we work with our world. It's going to be a lot. I mean, I really think this year is going to just change the way that we partner with people. It's going to change the way we have all those things and values. It's happening in Aquarius, which is usually representing people on a larger collective. But the fact that Atropos is also here, Atropos comes back to go back over Pluto again in the middle of the eclipse window of fall. So Juno will be pulling away from Pluto at the first eclipse in the fall, which is at August the 12th. The fact that's happening around the eclipses, you got Atropos of Fate on the other side of Pluto and Juno on the other side. I think that the fall eclipses are going to, let me see, and that's a new moon solar eclipse. So it's creating new, and it's at 20 Leo. So the actual, the sun will be with the moon, creating the new moon in Leo. So the opposition point of that will be in Aquarius. Now it's not going to be close to those, but it's still in an opposition, kind of farther away. But there's something about the way we're going to create new relationships with the next eclipse, and it's going to feel fated. And the other thing that's interesting with that too, the North Node moves from Pisces into Aquarius. It backs into it on the 26th of July. So the North Node is where we're going in our future. So if it's leaving Pisces, doing a deep dive journey for a year or a year and a half, it stays in the sign a year and a half. But it's going to go into Aquarius, 29th degree, the anaretic degree, going into the eclipses. And it's sitting on 29 degrees all the way through those eclipses in Aries, or I'm sorry, in Aquarius. So, North Node of where we're going and being in opposition to that new moon eclipse, I think this is what's happening now is going to set us up through the rest of this year for just major relationship change. Now, the other part to this, it doesn't have to just be marriages, friendships, business relationships, what have you. It can also be the way nations are in relationship with each other. It can be the way that humans are in relationship to the earth, how humans are in relationship to God, the all that is, creation energy. It's every way we partner, whatever our perception is of that. And that's why I'm saying that this is a huge transformational year. And the fact that the North Node is in Aquarius, it represents the people, according to most astrologers. So we're going to have another year and a half of that all the way through the end of 2027 of how we move forward as people. And I think 2026 and 7 are going to just be hugely transformational. So let me see. Pluto's going retrograde through that year. Let me see. Juno comes, now of course Juno's got to come back in. Where is it? I don't see, oh yeah, it does. I missed it where it was. Okay. So Juno comes back in on October 23rd, and it goes back over Pluto on November the 4th and 5th. So that's Juno again going over Pluto, more transformation. of relationships. So basically the whole year of 2026 is relationship transformation. And Neptune is still just in the beginning degrees of Aries. Saturn actually does get all the way to, I think, 14 degrees of Aries before going retrograde on the 26th of July. I just noticed that. Saturn stations retrograde the same day the North Node goes from Pisces into Aquarius. Wow. Interesting. And that's a square and a half, so that's going to be a challenging energy. Again, it just kind of speaks to deep transformation. It doesn't have to be a bad thing. We don't want to put a label of bad or good or what have you onto anything. But let's just say it's transformative energy this whole year. So let me see, what else did I want to go back into? Let me actually go back to Virgo, because so the actual eclipse is in Virgo. There's not really much there that's aspecting. It's next to the sextile to 3i Atlas. So I think it's working energy with, this interstellar cosmic awareness. The Judith asteroid is retrograde 5 degrees on the other side by the South Node. The John Cox asteroid, John, is on the other side. So John and Judith are on either side of the Virgo lunar eclipse. That's so funny. But there's not a lot else right there in that area. So that's good. So, but the bigger dynamic is what's happening in Pisces, which is in opposition to this eclipse. So I do think we're going to have releasing, and it could be also a healing releasing with regards to the physicality of our bodies. Not just physicality, though. It's a perfect moon. Full moons are releases. And we're going to do this in the meditation. Energetically, I may not articulate it, but it's a perfect energy to release anything emotionally, mentally, spiritually, to clear physicality, to clear it out of the DNA. This moon is very supportive of that as an energetic. So, and again, this is happening personally as well as collectively. So what's the collective wounding that can start shifting? It depends on the parameters you want to look at with regards to the collective. If you look at national wounds through countries, this eclipse really, I think, has the potential for countries to heal themselves as an identity. Now, whether they will or not, and what the journey looks like, of course, is very unique for each country. But I also think it's going to force people to face the full expression of how their countries are operating. The good, the bad, the ugly. Who are the people in charge of the countries, the business people, the corporations, whoever, whatever, but also the people as an identity, as a collective identity. So all Americans, of course, the collective identity is all over the map. If you listen to the way people articulate about their country, the USA's this, the USA's that. I mean, it runs the gamut as far as how people perceive themselves as an expression as a United States citizen. Again, that's true for every country. But depending on the cultural belief systems, the genetic and ancestral inheritances that they've had to work with, each country does have a different frequency. The countries in Africa, because they have been so deeply immersed in, really oppressive control, greed, enslavement, they have, I think, a really high capacity to release a lot of that. And, NESSUS is abuse, and so that's being activated with this. It's in opposition to this moon. So maybe the opposition will create a release of narcissism is a Scorpio, I think. But the abuse behaviors, which is NESSUS. So any and all abuses, I think, are going to have potential release for where we're at. It could also affect, because it's a health crisis sign, Virgo. If anything is around this full moon lunar eclipse in people's personal charts, you could see immediate death, I think. I don't mean that to be dramatic. It's just an observation. And you do have people leaving immediately. I mean, I know a lot of people here, my neighbor's gone into hospice this week. One of my aunts has had a heart thing all day long. People are starting to articulate, I might not be here in a week or two. I'm like, okay. And of course, we never know. But sometimes when people start articulating those things, it comes up in the bones. It comes up as an awareness. It comes up as who you are as presence. And if you ever dealt with people in the death process, they will always say that people usually know, they can feel it inside when they're going to die. They feel when they're going to leave, unless they're just totally out of it, and then death is presented as a shock, to take the soul from a place that it can't do the work anymore, and just removes them out of this reality, recycles them back in, and the soul journey comes back in, if they can't get it on the bigger scale. And again, I mean, that's not a one-size-fits-all either. So just, I mean, don't think that, each person is going to go through that as a life choice, because obviously it doesn't work that way. There are many souls that blink out for a lot of reasons, and it's not necessarily because they haven't even done their own soul growth. Some people have huge amounts of soul growth, but the soul decides that it's going to leave in a shocking way, because it's going to reverberate out and create a heart opening for so many other people that's tied to that soul to go deeper into their own heart and go through a healing process, transformation, shifting. I mean, it happens in a myriad of ways. And again, this soul work happens, it's not a linear event. It's not something you can look at through time. It's not even something you can look at as cause-effect reality. It's very deep, big picture dynamic. And anytime a soul chooses to leave young, like my sister left young, there was a pre-agreement that the soul would do that with the soul group. And okay, I went a lot of places I didn't expect to go with those things. So, what else with this moon? Basically, I mean, the big thing is that it's just the transformation. Eclipses are always windows of shift. I think they work as portals to get us from one reality to the next. A lot of people leave in eclipses because this is the full moon eclipse this week, this week and not 2 weeks ago. I think there's going to be a lot of leaving. I think there's going to be a lot of death. The death doesn't have to be a bad thing. It just means that the souls have chosen to leave for a myriad of reasons. So, depending on what you've got in your own life with people, you can observe that. And again, don't attach to death. I mean, when people leave, of course, it's shocking. You have to go through the grief process and all these things. But know that there is already a pre-agreement if you find a lot of people leaving in a shocking way. So, and again, these eclipse windows work for 6 months. So everything that's happened in the last 2 weeks the eclipse window is still very open right now. So we always have the moon before the first eclipse, I think, opens it up. Some astrologers say the moon even before that, a month before the first eclipse, opens it up. Who knows? But I definitely look at the moon prior to the first eclipse. Then I was going to do a call for the midpoint eclipse. I've done it the last 4 eclipse series for the last 2 years. But I just got that I just wasn't supposed to do it last week. Of course, we had, what was it? Oh, Trump was doing his little address, I guess. But I just got, no, it wasn't necessary. And I just didn't have the energy, quite frankly. I was so tired. So I let the 0 point energy of the eclipses, the midpoint, just pass this time. I didn't do the telecall. I figured, everybody's pretty advanced enough that we'd be fine without it. Anyway, so then we've got this one, which is the second eclipse. So then the next moon, next week, which will be, I hadn't even pulled it up to look. Where are we at? Well, where's the moon? Okay, so this is eclipse in Virgo. I'm finding the full moon. Oh, it's going to be in opposition, so it's not going to be in. It's going to be back in Pisces, I guess. I always have to look to see how the moons work in this chart. Okay, here we are. March 18th will be the next moon call, and that's going to be at 23 Pisces. No, I'm sorry, it's going to be at 28 Pisces. Yeah, the sun creates the moon. The midpoint was on the 23rd degree, but when it actually becomes exact, it's on the 28th degree. So the fact that moon is at the 28th degree of Pisces is really going to close out and be the final part of this the Virgo Pisces axis that we've been on. So that moon is going to really seed stuff before the sun gets on into the spring equinox 2 days later to meet up with Neptune, Saturn. So I think it's a really important part of this crucible. And I think that's the closing of the eclipse window is an active window process. But the eclipses themselves, they say, work for the whole next 6 months. And when you look at the Juno crossing Pluto energy, all partnerships going through deep transformation, and you take it for the next 6 months, that these eclipses are going to be working on partnering and transformation of partnering. I really think the next 6 months are potent times for just all that. And again, don't think of it just as marriages or sibling relationships. It's also your relationship to God. I mean, I include every type of partnership with it. I mean, Juno certainly does represent that for humans, but it's even how you partnership with yourself. I mean, on the very personal level, the micro level. But the fact that it's in Aquarius is usually other people. But I think it's going to be transformational. It's going to be relationships to other countries. Look at what's happening right now. I mean, I could really make a major case. And this is all through the tropical zodiac. I think all those things are happening. And, of course, the tropical zodiac is Western world. But that also doesn't mean we're not going to go through transformation with our relationships in other countries. If you switch into the sidereal astrology, Pluto's in Capricorn, Juno's in Capricorn. This transformational energy is going to be Capricorn, and it's not Aquarius in that world. So it'd be really good to talk to a real sidereal astrologer and ask for their interpretation of that. But that's structures. So that could be the way that we perceive marriages. It could be the way that we perceive business partnering, mergers, acquisitions. If that really is in Capricorn in the sidereal where the sun is, I could state a case that we're at the beginning of we're just now beginning to go through major shifts in the way we look at every type of partnership in that way, on the structural level, because it's in Capricorn. So again, really a huge pivotal year, I think, for 2006. So let me see what else was there. I think those were the big things. Now, the other thing that's going to happen, Chiron, which represents our wounding, it's the biggest centaur that's talked about and discussed. It's sitting on top of Eris. Like right now, it's going to be exact, like around the 20th of March, like around that spring equinox. So it's going to aspect anything that's, at 24, 23 to 25 degrees all through the chart. Some positive, some negative. But the fact you've got Eris, which is, the discord on top of that wounding, I think is going to be some really raw energy. And now through this year, though, Chiron, which is the wounding, is going to keep moving forward in Aries. And on the 19th of June, Chiron moves into Taurus. So rather than being in healing the I am expression, Chiron will be at that 29th degree from, let's say, the 31st of May. So the whole month of June, basically Chiron is going to be at, the last 3 months or 3 weeks, the first 3 weeks of June. It will be at that 29th degree, aneretic degree of Aries. I think we're going to have a lot of healing, let's just say it's going to be messy. Chiron representing everyone's wounding, individual and collective, at the end of Aries, I think is going to be very challenging for the first of February. But now when it switches into Taurus, then we're going to be going into Taurus is things we value. Venus rules Taurus. It's going to change the way we look at our wounding. It's not going to be in our I am presence anymore. It's going to take us into, I think, how we value ourselves as wounding. It's not. It won't necessarily be coming from the I am presence anymore. I do think we'll be more healed internally, individually, and collectively. But we're going to start to work with more earth. It could represent earth healing. Taurus is very earth oriented. So we'll see how that works into June. But I really didn't imagine going into the whole year of explanation with some of this stuff. But when I was going through this chart the last, I guess I've been looking at this for about a week. I've just been seeing different things, and Spirit's like, oh, look at this. Okay. So it creates an interesting energy, I think, of things that we're working with, as individuals and collectives. So, all right. Well, I've been going about an hour. I don't time these things, but I was sitting here thinking if there's anything else I need to go over with you guys, but I think the main thing with this, eclipse energy is just knowing that that we are going through a lot of change, and we're never going to go back to the way things were. I think that's going to be the most shocking part, is that we've gone through change, but this change is really permanent. It goes really deep, and it's a multidimensional change, not just with people, it's with nations, it's with the way we partner with everything and everyone around us. I mean, the symbolism of this is, it's really big. And actually, I guess I articulated a lot of it for myself just now. see here. Oh, so here's the other part. And I've mentioned this, I think, in the call or two before, but the Narcissus centaur, which is narcissism, Ceto-Forcis, that can also represent a lot of similar things. It ties to abuses and things like that too. It also represents the sea. I think Ceto had to do with the sea, if I remember right. So I think you're gonna have oceanic stuff, but those two centaurs are very close to each other, and they entered Sagittarius at the middle of January, I think. But the interesting part of that is that they are immersed in what I've told y'all and referred to before as the oscillating Lilith vortex. And Lilith represents, to me, the highest divine feminine expression when it's operating at its highest function. And it snakes itself back and forth through the zodiac over a whole sign, but usually two signs because it crosses over, about 30 to 40 degrees sometimes less. But it's going in between the end of Scorpio, Sagittarius, and Capricorn for the beginning of this year and on through. I think anything that goes through the vortex goes through a divine feminine awakening. Now, I mentioned this back in December when we had all the personal planets going through the galactic center. They had all been immersed deeply in the Lilith vortex. So they were transformed at that time, and so we were transformed personally at that time. But now that you've got Narcissus and Ceto that have also been going into the Lilith vortex, and that was actually happening about since October last year, I think. They are going to be tied up, and they're right next to each other, so they're working together, but they're also tied up pretty close to the Black Moon Lilith average. And people are always talking about that. Interpolar Lilith and the Clotho fate for a little bit earlier in the year, but they're going back and forth through this Lilith vortex. So to me, let me see if it goes all the way through the end of the year. Actually, I think the Lilith vortex moves beyond them starting in June, I think. Yeah, they'll be done with it in June. Yeah. Well, it gets close again in November, but it doesn't really get in it because Narcissus doesn't come back from Scorpio into Sagittarius until the 12th of November. But the reason I bring up the Narcissus is because anything narcissistic, people that are, we'll just look in the world. We don't have to name names. You can just look at narcissistic behavior. Narcissus is going to go back all the way to 23.5 degrees of Scorpio. So Scorpio, again, secrets, dark expression, sexuality, energies. I really think this is going to be more Epstein stuff coming out, especially the secrets part, sexual secrets, narcissistic people. It goes back all the way through August the 4th before it goes direct. So it's going to be in Scorpio. Let me see when it re-enters back in Scorpio. It goes back to Scorpio on April 17th. So it's going to spin from April 17th all the way back to November. It's going to be in Scorpio. It's going to go back to that 22-degree Scorpio full moon of 2025. And I told y'all in the last, calls all the way since that time period, that degree is getting worked over and worked over and worked over. And it's the other reason I think that you're going to have so much more in secretive sexual stuff coming out, especially with narcissistic personalities. And with Lilith involved, I think it's going to pull out any of that darker sexual expression. So I think you're just going to get more of the same is what my point is. And it's not going to be clear. I think it's going to still be very murky. I do think there's going to be a lot more disclosure, but it's going to be very challenging energy still, I think. But now, while NESSUS is in Sagittarius, all the way from now until the April 17th, it is trining Neptune. It's trining Saturn in a more flowing energy. So I think that we're working with things in a positive way toward the new reality. But when it goes back into Scorpio, it's going to be trining anything that's in Pisces. So it'll be an out of sign trine for a little bit with Neptune, but it's basically going to just take us in a deep dive for the rest of the year. So just be ready for that. I think it's a deep dive. I don't think anybody on this call is going to have a problem with Narcissus. I don't think any of you have any narcissistic stuff still playing out at all. Yeah, so there's that part. So I think those are the big points of anything that I had seen in the charts that I wanted to kind of go through with everybody. I hope that has not been too long-winded. I hope it's helpful, because I never want something to be not helpful. But that at least can tell you where the astrology can give us clues for how to shift things, that we may be dealing with in our own world. Or if, usually it's also observing other people. I mean, a lot of times we're not doing the stuff of processing anymore because we've already done so much processing. But sometimes it's the people around us. So it can give us context for things we see. Again, do not attach to anything imploding on itself. It can be your family, it can be your kids. I mean, I don't care what it is. Don't attach to it. Attachment only creates suffering. But this is really, I think, still between this year and the next year, it really is taking us to our core as far as owning our I am presence, because Saturn is going to be in Aries all the way through, I guess maybe April or May or something, 2028, I think. And of course, I get to deal with Saturn and Aries personally for the next couple of years. Woohoo! Having a Saturn return. So I just hope and pray that my Saturn return will be nice, and I don't mind nice transformative, but I certainly don't want some of the people that have had some awful Saturn returns where it's like you wonder, God, what happened to you? I mean, and these can be people that are, especially some of these New Agers, when I read some of their stuff and they put out and the life that they've had problems with and just the challenges that they face, it's like, oh my God, people have to go through such a downtrodden journey. It's like, oh God. So I'm just hoping I don't have to go through anything, like some of that stuff does. Anyway, okay, well, I think that is a good place to leave this part of our call and then begin to go into meditative part. That's always the fun part, isn't it? Going into our meditations. So let's see here. Oh, we got up to 14 people. So take away my computer, that's 13. Ha! I'm telling you, this whole last year 13 has been the magic number we usually end up with as an average of callers. That's so funny. Yeah. So again, the main thing is just, I think as always, stay in your heart. Know as I really think that everyone on this call is really in a place of just deep refinement. I don't think any of you haven't done enough transmutation on a soul level and progression, that you're going to have really hard challenges I mean, some of you have already been through it, and a lot of you are in your 60s and 70s. I know there's some others of us on the call that are just in our 50s. But the further you are in soul progression, of course, I mean, you certainly learn from past mistakes. And some of you are still struggling, I think. A couple of you that I know, are still, working on either family dynamics, attempting to, do some more core releasing on how you see, either children, other extended family, maybe your friendships, neighbors. But I think all of us, we're entering a time where we're going through transformation of how we perceive the other, whatever the other is. And that really is beyond our neighbors and physicality, through our neighborhoods. It really is, how do you see the neighbors of your neighboring states, neighboring nations, neighboring cultures, neighboring nationalities, I mean, all these things. And that's what's really being called for right now. And a lot of that is going to happen through a bull in a china shop. There's a lot of bulls in china shops in the world right now. Don't need to name any names. We see what it is. The core of all this, and I've said this before too, I mean, I've had some conversations with people that ask me, well, how can Trump do this? How can Ukraine do that? Here's the deal. Every human soul is doing what it came here to do. It may not be playing out its highest expression in the way we can perceive what the soul's doing. There's so many bigger dynamics. There's so many bigger pictures. There are so many ways in which humanity has to go through a change. And sometimes you have to take people to the deepest core part of their hearts, the pure soul part. And I'm talking about your essence, all the way to pure essence. To get people into their essence sometimes has to be traumatic. It has to be through just the most awful perceived circumstance that you can imagine possible, because the reality has to break apart in totality before it can renew itself. And anyone that knows the story of Eckhart Tolle and his experiences, he went through just complete disintegration of his 3D life. And I mean, he certainly is not a poster child for anything. Of course, I mean, he wrote, a few books about it, and people can look at that and say, oh, well, okay. And you get a different perspective. I mean, Adyashanti, the way he writes is just amazing. Emptiness Dancing, one of the great books. I love that book. But it really gives you a place, for your soul to just jump and dive into something of just the nothing, of something you've never been taught. They certainly don't teach this in school. But it lets you leave. It lets you leave the way you perceive yourself within the matrix. And that's really where you take your power back. That's about all I can really, give you as far as even just a thimble of wisdom with regards to that. Again, do not get attached to the world of form, what's breaking apart, how it's functioning, how it breaks apart. If you are in a certain place, I mean, if you're in Minneapolis and your soul calls you to act a certain way, if your soul is called to go to the Middle East, which I wouldn't advise right now, but there are souls there. There are people that are activating there. There are people, I mean, there was somebody right here within 50 miles of here that was in Acapulco last week, owns Window World, a big corporation here that puts windows in homes. He and his family were down there, and they're sitting there taking videos of these cars being bombed, all this crap going around. It's another CIA black op creating fear, and it has to go into the bigger dynamic of that. Is they really want this hard. They want to force everybody into the digital system. They want everybody to have that. For your convenience, you need to be able to be tracked. You need to be able to pay your bills by swiping your arm. Well, I don't think so. I just say, no matter who you are, just please be wary of anything technological. Be wary of anything that takes you away from the core of your humanity. Anything that would attempt to bring you into some sort of controlled dynamic. I think that's just really important. I mean, again, your own soul will be the guide here. It's not for me to tell you what to do, how to go about it, what have you, but I certainly will suggest to you just be vigilant in what your heart and soul is drawn to. And they're trying really, really, really hard to pull in, especially people in the New Age world, to distort, I'm going to call it distorted reality, because we really are they're trying to take us into a deep distortion, even worse than what we're in. And I don't think that's going to be successful, but you do have some people that are on autopilot, and they're going to go right to it like a moth to a flame. That's going to be sad. All you can do is be grounded, hold your own ground, a space, center yourself in your breath. If you've never done yoga work, if you've never done mindfulness meditations, if you've never contemplated any of those things, it might be a great time to take that in. Use this eclipse window to walk into a more conscious, loving reality for yourself. And again, we're each creating everything, and if there's something that pulls you away from it, just kind of sit in that and say, do I really need that? And it's going to be, again, with this moon, it's a full moon, so it's releasing. Release everything in the material world that you don't need. I really highly do suggest that one, because you can't take it with you. We really can't. It's also going to create much less densification for you, just as an energy. We are all an energy event. We're all a frequency. And if you're carrying a lot of densification through the material world, it can hold you back in a way. Now, if you're not attached to it, that's one thing. If you're just in the world but not of the world, then you're in a good space. But you really don't want it to be attached to anything right now. We're really going into the immediacy of our existence, and in that immediacy, at any time, life can change on a dime. And as we are co-creating our own life from our own perspective of our I am presence, we're still not separate from the whole, no matter what's happening. So, it really does work as, you're a drop in the ocean, but there's 8 billion drops in the ocean. And I still think that number's hugely inflated, but it doesn't matter how many the numbers are, quite frankly. That's the other point to it. There's a number out there of souls that are embodied on the planet, and they are, here, they're doing soul work, they're going through transmutation, they're making conscious or unconscious choices every nanosecond of their lives, and they're getting a reality at that moment. I will say that as the time-space continuum is collapsing on itself, we're only in an eternal moment, more and more and more. I think people are realizing that. And as the matrix continues to break down, the false matrix, it's going to leave a lot of people just floating in oceanic presence, and they're going to be just like, oh my gosh, what's happened to me? So I think part of that's, what's happening now. So, okay, well, I guess I did mean to go into all of that. Again, Spirit just takes me wherever I go on these things. I never plan what I'm going to say on these things. I remember when we used to go to all those retreats with Jude, or the workshops she would do, and she would just start talking. You could just tell she's just like, whatever's coming in just comes in. I guess I'm officially there. So, okay, all right. At least the cough, and thank you, Mike, for suggesting that again this week, since I think it was Bobette last week that just suggested that 3-minute meditation to go in and set us in a tone of good soft energy, and because it really has, I think, helped my cough with all of this. All right, so I'm going to set my tone in my living room. I had all these lights on from when I got home from taking the aunt to the hospital. So if you haven't found your couch, if you haven't found your bed, your beanie bag, perhaps you have a hammock on a beach. I don't think any of you are on a beach right now, but we can always create that. I really want a beach right now. I miss my days where I could just get in the car, put my top down, on the car, not me, and drive over to Pensacola or Destin and just really enjoy being out there. Walking in the sand, got your little toes, there's just something about water that's just so healing. I mean, it really is. It's just very transformative. And also when you're in it, though, it's like you get all these waves. It's like an energetic shift. And I think that's the biggest thing about the ocean, especially, is that the oceanic presence just takes everything and washes it away. I mean, I really think it's it's one of the most healing modalities of the planet. Okay. Oh, I need my cough drops too. Okay, here we go. So, since this is a full moon lunar eclipse, it's starting to crop up again. So just look at your own awareness, your own space, your circumstances, relationship dynamics, business, personal, what have you. If there's anything that just still doesn't feel like it's shifted where you want it to be, don't try to have your mind tell you where you want it to go. This really is a time of immense capacity for surrendering and letting Spirit take you into true magic. I mean, if we're going to use this as a portal and time jump, which I think we're doing, imagine that so many of your own timelines are collapsing to the point where within 6 months your life could be totally unrecognizable. If you want that. Now, if you don't want that, then don't. Again, you're a powerful creator. We're all powerful creators. But imagine that this really is a portal. It's a point of jumping, where you can jump a timeline, where you can release something that doesn't serve you anymore. Maybe it's relationships. I've got some things I am asking Spirit. This has served me well. I've learned a lot from it. I need to be free from this in whatever way Spirit can deliver that to me. There's something about relinquishing control of how a dynamic can shift. So many times our brains may come up with something, and our heart, the heart wants what the heart wants. But if our mind is approaching something from a place of control, especially in relationship to shared relationship dynamic. Let's just call it that, with other people. If you're making a huge shift in the way you perceive the relationship or what you want from the relationship, are you creating something detrimental for the other person? Spirit's really taken me into this in the last 2 weeks with some stuff that I want to shift in my own life. I want some stuff to shift, and I want some things to change, and I want to release some things that I feel like it's time that my soul does release. And part of that is the energy and dynamic of this particular eclipse series. It's a thing, it's a 12 Virgo, so the sun's in Pisces. But with all the personal planets in Pisces, I really think it is really lending itself to personal transformation. And with Juno, as I told you, that's going to be crisscrossing with Pluto this year, that is huge transformational energy for relationships. I'm really asking Spirit to just release me from some ancestral obligations, major ancestral inheritances. I mean, it is not our place to carry our ancestors. It's not our place to have to caretake constantly, and not be able to do for ourselves on a creative level. And so, again, that's a personal kind of explanation for you, but you're each going to have your own ways in which you want to shift something in your own life. Get out of the way, though, and just put your wish list in a way where it can take you where you want to go without hurting anyone else's soul expression, or you're not taking away from someone else's care. But you can certainly ask for a transformative energy that shifts the whole game. And the other part to this, too, is you may be feeling something in wanting a shift of relationship, but I assure you, the other person, either consciously or unconsciously, will also know that you want the shift. You may not articulate it, and you may not articulate it because you don't want to hurt their feelings. You don't want to, create some polarity dynamic. But it's still incumbent on us, I think, to work with Spirit on a conscious level and say, I really don't want this in my life anymore. And it doesn't have to be a good or bad. You don't place a value on it. You just say, I want a change. Again, it can be any type of dynamic that's in your life where you feel like if something is holding you back from living your highest potentiality, that's what I would suggest to you. You may observe and say, may I release this? So as we go into this meditation, I'm not going to do something where I call in because my voice is tired and I'll be coughing, and it's just but before I go into all this, just imagine, like I've done so many other times, imagine we're calling in Mother, Father, God, we're calling in the entire company of heaven, you're calling in the entire archangelic presence, you're calling in every ascended master through infinite presence, you're calling in the mighty Elohim, builders of form, you're calling in the entire elemental kingdoms, you're calling in Saint Germain and the Violet Flame, you're calling in the Diamond Christ Light, the 12th Golden Ray, and you just let presence take care of whatever it is. I mean, we're always in attendance with all of this anyway. I mean, I feel like we're always supported in that. And so many of you have also written to me so many times in the last 2 years saying that you really feel supported, when we do these group things, and then you'll have an actual shift happen in physicality where it gives you, something that, you may say, oh, it would be a miracle if this could happen. but you're actually getting the miracle. You're being met you're being met in form. And that's the main thing with all this. And the great thing is, when we come together as a group frequency, we really are shifting. We're holding space for each other to shift into our highest capacities. There's too many of you that have told me that's happened for you. Now, there's a couple of you that still have some places where you're still trying to shift things in relationships and personal stuff. Wherever that is, that's your mind holding on to something. It's just the mind, that's all. Don't judge it. Don't berate yourself for this or if you're still in a place where you're still carrying something in the DNA. This is the moon, though. This is the absolute moon. Eclipses are like 100,000 more times the power of the full moon or the new moon energy, whichever it is. So this is on steroids. And it's very potent. Again, be careful what you ask for. And if you're wanting to hold someone else in the highest potentiality of their own presence, present it just like that. We do not want to, my suggestion, you don't want to project a certain value of yours onto anyone else's dream or anyone else's healing or anything else. Because if we do that, we're creating a limitation. You can't know the totality of someone else's soul contract, what they came here to do, what they came here to learn. And it's really a very, some people say, oh, it's splitting hairs. Well, really, it's not. Imagine how much power you're taking by even making a conscious choice to not pray for something for someone else because you don't know what's best for their soul. It really is getting out of the way in its highest capacity. You go in and you just energize the field and ask for the highest potentiality for any and all souls and all sentient and non-sentient beings that are in existence. And that's what I do. That way, it's totally open-ended. It's not created from a place of polarity. It's not created from a place of limitation. It's created from the eternal isness, is what it feels like to me. So, again, if none of this feels true to you, then don't take it in. But if this does go into the core of your bones and being, and you feel like it helps you clear something, then go into it. And I think the fact that we're all still on these calls, I think we're all in sync on a soul level, I think. So, okay, that's enough of that. All right, so I've called everybody in. Everything's already here with us. We're here as presence. So, again, anything you want shifted, just throw it in to a chemical fire and just ask for spirit to bring all your guides together, all of the soul entanglements that you're currently in, the soul groups that you're in. Ask for the highest alignment and shifts that can take you where you want to go. And then allow for everything else to be released. Ask it to be released from your mind, from your heart, from your spirit, from your emotional body. Ask everything to be released on the core level of your essence. Everything. More importantly, know it can be done. That's some really powerful statements, isn't it? I mean, when you really go into it, say, oh, wow. And you may say, am I that powerful? And I would tell you, yes, you are. We're each that powerful. So on that note, let's just go deep dive. And let's recalibrate. And there's no doing to this. All we're doing is letting Spirit, through eternal presence, come in and literally dissolve everything that no longer serves us. Everything, and it can be so instantaneous. Some of you will automatically feel a buzzing within all the cells of your being. You're already there because you're embodying this isness more and more every time. I'm going to mute myself too so I don't cough. So go deep. Okay, everyone. I think that we've gone pretty deep today. I think we've shifted a lot. I think it's going to be, this will reverberate out for quite some time. The good thing is, I think that part of the hardest part's over, but there's still quite a bit of shift to go. So anyway, well, as usual, I'm going to go ahead and start recording on the